A 250-pound gym bro grabbed my wrist to show the bar what weakness looks like, then shoved me into the counter and told everyone I was a creeper who couldn't take a hint. When I tried to calmly finish my drink, he slapped my glasses across the bar and said, "You look 12, bro. Go back to daycare." I stayed relaxed. That was 8 days ago. Last night, his friend sent me a clip of him crying in the parking lot after watching the footage go viral. A 250-pound gym bro picked a fight with me to impress a girl, not knowing I was a Taekwondo black belt. At 5'7" and 140 pounds, I wasn't exactly the most intimidating. Hammered guys at bars always picked me when they wanted to look tough in front of women. So when I saw this 6'2" gym bro marching over to where I was chatting with a pretty brunette, I already knew how this would go. He wedged himself between us, his massive frame completely blocking me out. Didn't even look at me, just turned his broad back like I was furniture. "Let me get you a real drink, beautiful," he said, flagging down the bartender. "Not whatever this little guy was boring you with." She glanced around his shoulder at me, clearly uncomfortable. "Actually, we were just, trust me," he cut her off, placing a protective hand on the bar in front of her, creating a wall. "You need someone who can actually take care of you." He ordered her a martini without asking, then finally acknowledged my existence with a dismissive glance. "You can go now, buddy." When I didn't move, he shifted his weight, using his size to push me further down the bar. The edge of the counter dug into my ribs. Still, I stayed put, sipping my beer. He'd expected me to scurry away by now. He turned to me fully for the first time, looking me up and down with theatrical disgust. Asked if I was deaf or something. When I calmly said I was just finishing my drink, his hand shot out and swiped my glasses off my face. They clattered across the bar. Everything went blurry. He made jokes about me not being able to see up to his height. Told the girl maybe that's why I hadn't gotten the hint. I stayed still, breathing normally. 10 years of training had taught me the most important lesson. Real fighters don't fight in bars. Too much liability. Too much to lose. My instructor certification, my gym, potential lawsuits, all gone over some hammered idiot. I reached for my glasses with measured movements. He slid them further away with one finger, told me to leave them. I walked around him to retrieve them, keeping everything neutral. When I sat back down with my glasses, he spun around to face the entire bar and announced loudly that we had a creeper situation. His voice boomed over the music as he pointed at me with his beer bottle, claiming I'd been bothering this nice lady for an hour. The brunette tried to protest, but he interrupted, putting a possessive hand on her shoulder that made her flinch. Told everyone not to worry, he had it handled. His buddies at a corner table started laughing and shouting. Someone asked if I was in middle school. He grinned and turned to the bartender, suggesting I should be carded again because I looked about 12. The brunette pulled away from his hand, but he kept talking over her, telling her she didn't have to be polite anymore. Half the bar was watching now, some people whispering, shooting me suspicious looks. My reputation at this place, where I'd been a regular for 2 years, was being destroyed in real time. Then he decided to demonstrate my weakness. He grabbed my wrist suddenly, holding it up for the bar to see while comparing it to his 12-year-old nephew's arms. I didn't resist, keeping my breathing steady as he squeezed harder, his thumb pressing into the pressure point. He yanked me off the bar stool effortlessly, spinning me around to show the girl what would happen if real danger showed up, then shoved me back against the bar, not hard enough to be considered assault, but enough to make his point. The edge dug into my spine. He stood there waiting, telling me to push back, show her I was a real man. I stayed relaxed, hands at my sides. No aggressive stance, nothing that could justify what he wanted to do. His face darkened at my non-reaction, called me pathetic. He turned to the girl, explaining this was why she needed someone like him around, painted scenarios of what could happen with me just standing there doing nothing if he was actually dangerous. The brunette stood up, said she was leaving. He grabbed her wrist immediately, insisting he'd walk her to her car because the streets weren't safe. Her voice was firm, but I could hear the fear underneath when she told him to let go. He tightened his grip slightly, still smiling, saying he was just trying to help. She tried to pull away, but he held firm, told her to relax. He was just being a gentleman. His grip tightened enough to make her gasp. She was getting genuinely scared now, panic in her voice as she pushed against his chest with her free hand. That's when something shifted in his eyes. The hammered bravado turned into something uglier. He yanked her against him with real force, dismissing her protests as being dramatic. She cried out, twisting hard to break free. He grabbed her other wrist too, holding both while looking at me with cruel satisfaction. Made his final point about what happens when weak little boys can't protect anyone. I moved. Breaking his grip on her wrists took a simple redirection technique. "Walk away," I said. He shoved me hard. I let the momentum take me back but didn't fall. The brunette scrambled behind the bar. The bartender was already on the phone, probably calling security. He charged at me like a bull, throwing a wild haymaker. I slipped left, his fist hitting nothing but air. He stumbled forward from his own momentum, then spun around with another huge swing. I ducked under it, pivoted behind him. He whirled again, throwing punch after punch. Each one missed by inches as I weaved, slipped, redirected. His breathing got heavy. Sweat darkened his tank top. The crowd had formed a circle, recording with phones. He was exhausted, confused, demanding I stop dancing and fight. The security guard appeared through the crowd, his hand already on his radio. The gym bro immediately switched tactics, raising his hands and backing away, suddenly the picture of innocence. He started explaining to the guard how I'd been harassing the young lady, how he'd just been trying to help. His buddies from the corner table chimed in, backing his version of events. The brunette emerged from behind the bar, her voice shaking as she told security what really happened. The gym bro's face darkened when she described how he'd grabbed her wrists. He interrupted, claiming she was confused, maybe had too much to drink. The security guard looked between us, clearly trying to piece together the truth. I stayed quiet, letting the brunette speak. The bartender confirmed her story, mentioning he'd watched the whole thing unfold. Several other regulars spoke up too, people who'd seen me here for years without incident. The gym bro's story started falling apart, his buddies growing quieter with each witness. Security escorted him and his friends out. He shot me a look over his shoulder that promised this wasn't over. The brunette thanked me, her hands still trembling slightly. I made sure she got to her car safely, then headed home myself, thinking that would be the end of it. The next morning, I opened my gym at 5 a.m. like always. By 6:30, my regular morning class was warming up when I heard the front door slam. The gym bro walked in, stone sober now, his jaw set with determination. He'd found me. My business name was on my shirt at the bar, easy enough to Google. He demanded a real fight, no witnesses this time. time except my students. When I declined and asked him to leave, he started his campaign. First, he signed up for a month-to-month membership, filling out the paperwork with exaggerated politeness. I couldn't legally refuse him without cause. He started showing up during every single one of my classes, sitting in the back, watching. He never participated, just observed, made my students uncomfortable with his presence, his size, the way he'd stare at me throughout the entire session. Some of my longtime students started asking questions. A few of the newer ones stopped coming altogether. When parents dropping off kids for youth classes saw him lurking, they'd hesitate. I watched my afternoon classes shrink from 15 kids to 8, then 5. He was smart about it. Never said anything threatening, never made any aggressive moves, just showed up, paid his membership fee, and watched. When I tried to address it with him directly, he'd smile and say he was just trying to learn. Maybe I could give him private lessons. The mockery in his voice was clear, but nothing I could act on legally. My peaceful life was being invaded piece by piece. One evening, I was having dinner with my girlfriend Sarah at our usual spot when he walked in with a date. They sat where we could see them clearly. He spent the entire meal staring at our table, occasionally leaning over to whisper something to his date that made her glance our way and giggle. Sarah noticed immediately, asked who he was, why he kept looking over. I tried to explain without worrying her, but she could see the tension in my shoulders. When we left, he followed us out, calling after me that it was good to see me again, asking if I'd introduce him to my lady friend. Sarah gripped my hand tighter, quickening her pace to the car. That night, she asked me what was really going on. The next day, he found my social media, started commenting on old photos, nothing overtly threatening, just enough to let me know he was digging into my life. Liked pictures from years ago, photos with my family, my friends, documenting every connection I had. The comments were subtle, things like nice form on training videos or beautiful couple on photos with Sarah. My phone buzzed constantly with notifications. He was methodical, spacing them out throughout the day. Talk about zero to stalker in record time. This guy went from failed bar pickup to full-time creepy hobby faster than his punches missed their target. I'd be teaching a class and feel my phone vibrate, knowing it was him, unable to check until after. The psychological pressure was building exactly as he intended. My students noticed my distraction, my edge. Sarah started getting friend requests from accounts with no profile pictures. The messages were friendly enough, asking about her work, mentioning they were friends of mine. She showed them to me, worried. The language was careful, nothing she could report, but we both knew who was behind them. Her comfort in her own daily routine was being eroded. I considered going to the police, but what would I say? A guy was attending my public business and liking my public photos? They'd tell me to block him and move on. He hadn't made any direct threats, hadn't touched me or anyone else since that night at the bar. He was playing a longer game, and he was winning. My business suffered more each week. Word had gotten around somehow that there was some kind of drama at my gym. In a small community, reputation was everything. Parents pulled their kids from classes. Adult students found excuses to take breaks that I knew would be permanent. My morning class went from 12 regulars to 4 loyal students who'd been with me since the beginning. They turned their attention to him immediately, asking if the little boy was going to show them some moves. I intervened, asking them to leave. They'd paid their day passes, they argued. They weren't breaking any rules, just having conversations. The smirk on the gym bro's face told me this was exactly what he'd wanted. After that incident, Marcus's parents pulled him from the program, said they didn't feel the environment was safe anymore. They were right. What had been a place of discipline and respect was becoming a circus. The gym bro had found the perfect way to destroy what I'd built without ever throwing a punch. Sarah and I were at the grocery store when he appeared at the end of our aisle with his cart. He made a show of recognizing us, insisting on introducing himself to Sarah properly. She stayed behind me as he extended his hand, that fake friendly smile plastered on his face. When she didn't take it, he laughed and made a comment about me teaching her to be unfriendly too. He followed us through the store at a distance, always showing up in the next aisle, always with that same smile. Sarah's hands shook as she tried to shop normally. At the checkout, he got in line right behind us, close enough that we could smell his cologne. Made small talk with the cashier about how nice it was to run into friends while shopping. That night, Sarah broke down, said she couldn't handle the constant feeling of being watched, the anxiety of wondering when he'd appear next. She wanted me to do something, anything, to make it stop. But what could I do that wouldn't play right into his hands? He wanted me to lose control, to attack him, to give him the fight he'd been denied at the bar. I started documenting everything, every appearance, every social media interaction, every time he showed up at my gym, building a paper trail in case I eventually needed it. But documentation felt passive while he was actively dismantling my life. My income had dropped by 60%. Sarah was considering staying with her sister for a while. 3 weeks into his campaign, I arrived at the gym to find my front window tagged with graffiti. Nothing that directly implicated him, just crude drawings and profanity. The security footage showed figures in hoodies, faces obscured. The police took a report, said they'd increase patrols, but we all knew nothing would come of it. The cleanup cost ate into my already strained budget. The next morning, flyers appeared around the neighborhood. They advertised a new MMA gym opening soon, with bold text claiming, "Real fighting, not dancing, and learn what actually works." The contact number led to a voicemail that was clearly his voice, though he used a fake name. He was escalating, trying to destroy not just my peace, but my livelihood entirely. My remaining students were loyal, but I could see the strain on them too. They'd signed up to learn martial arts in a respectful environment, not to be part of some ongoing conflict. 2 more gave notice that they'd be taking a break. I understood. I would have done the same in their position. The sanctuary I'd built was gone. Sarah moved in with her sister temporarily, said she needed space to think, couldn't handle the stress of never knowing when he'd appear. I couldn't blame her. The psychological warfare was working exactly as he'd intended. He was systematically isolating me, removing my support systems one by one, all without doing anything that would justify real consequences. I knew I had to make a choice soon. Either find a way to end this that didn't involve violence or watch everything I'd built crumble completely. But he'd been so careful, so calculating. Every move designed to provoke while staying just within legal boundaries. I needed to be smarter, find a way to turn his own tactics against him. The question was how, before I lost everything that mattered. I spent the next 3 nights barely sleeping, running through scenarios in my head. My instructor's old lessons kept echoing back. The best victory is one where your opponent defeats themselves, but applying that philosophy to real-world harassment was proving harder than any tournament I'd ever faced. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. One of my 4 remaining morning students, Victoria, approached me after class. She worked in social media marketing and had noticed the fake accounts targeting Sarah. She offered to help trace them, explaining how metadata and posting patterns could reveal connections. Within hours, she documented links between the accounts and the gym bro's actual profile. Her findings gave me an idea. If he wanted to play games with documentation and social presence, I could play too. I started recording every class session, explaining to my students it was for instructional purposes. The camera captured not just our training, but also him sitting in the back, watching, his friends making their comments, the uncomfortable atmosphere they created. I edited the footage carefully, creating training videos that happened to show the disruptions in the background, posted them on my gym's social media with captions about maintaining focus despite distractions. My students began sharing them, adding their own comments about the hostile environment. Parents who'd pulled their kids started asking questions. The gym bro noticed the videos within days. His response was predictable. More friends showing up, louder comments, more obvious disruption. But now it was all being recorded. Every mocking gesture, every snide remark, every moment of intimidation captured in high definition. He didn't realize he was building my case for me. Meanwhile, I'd been studying his patterns. He had a routine too. Gym in the mornings, protein shake at the same shop, lunch at the sports bar where his buddies gathered. I didn't follow him, didn't need to. Social media told me everything. He posted constantly, broadcasting his location like a beacon. I reached out to the brunette from the bar through the bartender. She was willing to help, still shaken by that night. She'd kept screenshots of messages he'd sent her afterward, alternating between apologies and accusations. She'd also talked to other women who'd had similar experiences with him. There was a pattern here, one that extended beyond just me. Sarah called me late one night crying. Someone had slashed her tires at her sister's apartment complex. No cameras in the parking lot, no witnesses. She was scared, wanted to move back home to her parents. I couldn't blame her, but losing her felt like handing him another victory. I convinced her to give me one more week. The next morning, I arrived at my gym to find the lock glued shut. The locksmith cost me $200 and 3 hours of canceled classes. Inside, someone had spread protein powder across the mats. Not enough to be vandalism, just enough to require professional cleaning. My landlord called that afternoon, saying he'd received complaints about noise and disruptions from my business. I knew I was running out of time and options, but I also knew something the gym bro didn't. I'd been building more than just a paper trail. Victoria had connected me with other business owners who dealt with similar harassment. The coffee shop owner remembered him from a previous campaign against a competitor. The manager at the sports bar had stories about fights he'd started, but always managed to blame on others. We formed an informal network, sharing information and experiences. The picture that emerged was clear. This wasn't his first campaign of harassment. He'd done this before, always careful to stay just within legal boundaries, always picking targets he thought couldn't fight back, but he'd never faced coordinated resistance. I started phase 2 of my plan. Instead of avoiding the places he frequented, I began showing up at the sports bar during lunch, not to confront him, just to be visible. I'd sit at the bar, order food, chat with the staff. His friends would whisper and point, but I acted oblivious. The manager, now aware of the situation, kept an eye on things. He tried to escalate there too, approaching my table one day with his whole crew. They surrounded me while I ate my sandwich, making comments about my food choices, my size, my martial arts. So he's documenting everything on camera while pretending it's for teaching videos? That's really clever how he turned the harassment into evidence without the bully even knowing. I just kept eating, occasionally nodding as if they were having a friendly conversation. Other patrons started noticing the one-sided nature of the interaction. The breakthrough came when one of his friends, slightly smarter than the rest, pulled him aside. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I saw the gesture toward the security cameras, the worried looks. They left shortly after, but not before he knocked over my water glass, accidentally. The manager comped my meal and assured me the footage was saved. My morning classes started to recover. 2 former students returned, saying they'd seen the videos and realized what was happening. Parents who'd pulled their kids began asking about re-enrollment. The gym bro responded by increasing his presence, but now it was backfiring. The more he showed up, the more evidence we collected. Victoria discovered something interesting in her research. The gym bro worked at a high-end fitness club across town, one that prided itself on its professional atmosphere and code of conduct. Their social media featured him prominently as a trainer. She suggested we document how their employee was spending his mornings. I hesitated at involving his workplace, but then Sarah called again. Someone had created a fake dating profile using her photos, listing her sister's address. The messages she was receiving were getting increasingly disturbing. That crossed a line I couldn't ignore anymore. We compiled everything. The videos from my gym, the witness statements from the bar, the documented harassment, the fake social media accounts. Victoria helped create a professional presentation, focusing on facts rather than accusations. I sent it to the fitness club's management with a simple note explaining the situation. The response was swift. The gym bro showed up at my door that evening, pounding and yelling. I didn't answer, just recorded through the window as he screamed about getting him fired, ruining his life. How I'd regret this. My neighbor called the police. He left before they arrived, but the damage was done. He'd finally lost control in a way that mattered. His workplace suspended him pending investigation. Without his job, he couldn't afford to keep paying for day passes to harass my classes, but he wasn't done yet. The fake profiles targeting Sarah increased. The late-night calls to my gym started. Pizza deliveries I hadn't ordered. Classic harassment tactics, but increasingly desperate. I kept documenting, kept teaching, kept rebuilding. My students rallied around me, spreading the word about what was really happening. The community that he'd tried to turn against me began to see the truth. Local martial arts schools reached out in solidarity. Some offered to host my displaced students. Others shared their own stories of dealing with troublemakers. The fitness club completed their investigation. Multiple female members had complained about his behavior over the years, complaints that had been ignored or minimized. My documentation was the final straw. They terminated his employment and banned him from their facilities. Word spread quickly in the fitness community. He showed up at my gym one last time during my evening class, but this time he wasn't alone. He'd brought what what looked like a lawyer, an older man in a suit who handed me an envelope. Inside was a cease and desist letter, accusing me of defamation and harassment. The irony wasn't lost on me. I passed the letter to my own lawyer, a friend from my morning class who'd watched this whole saga unfold. She laughed when she read it, pointing out the numerous flaws and baseless claims. She drafted a response that outlined the documented harassment, the witnesses, the evidence. She also mentioned the criminal complaints that could be filed if he continued. The fake profiles stopped within days. The calls ceased. His friends no longer showed up at my gym, but I knew he was still out there, still angry, still looking for an opportunity. I maintained the security cameras, kept the documentation updated, stayed alert. Sarah slowly started coming back around. She'd seen how I handled the situation without violence, using patience and intelligence instead of fists. She moved back from her sister's place, but installed new locks and a security system. We both knew this had changed us, made us more cautious, but also stronger. My gym began to thrive again. The students who'd stuck with me through the harassment became my most dedicated practitioners. New students joined, drawn by the story of a martial arts instructor who'd lived his principles even under pressure. Parents appreciated the security measures and the emphasis on real-world application of discipline. I learned that the gym bro had moved to another city, supposedly for a fresh start, but Victoria kept tabs on social media, watching for familiar patterns. Sure enough, within months, similar stories began emerging from his new location. Another gym owner reached out, having heard about our situation. I shared our documentation and strategies. The network we'd built became something larger. Business owners, particularly women, started sharing resources for dealing with harassment. We created a private group where people could seek advice and support. What had started as one man's vendetta had inadvertently sparked a community response to a widespread problem. 6 months after that night at the bar, I ran into the brunette again. She thanked me, not just for that night, but for following through. She'd been inspired to take self-defense classes, though she chose Krav Maga instead of Taekwondo. We laughed about that. She mentioned she'd been sharing her story too, warning other women about aggressive men who wouldn't take no for an answer. My relationship with Sarah grew stronger through the ordeal. We'd weathered something that would have broken many couples. She'd seen me at my most frustrated and vulnerable, but also at my most determined. She started taking classes at my gym, not to learn to fight, but to understand the discipline that had kept me centered. The experience changed how I taught too. I incorporated more situational awareness training, more discussion of real-world applications beyond physical confrontation. My students learned not just how to throw a punch, but how to document threats, build support networks, and use intelligence over aggression. The informal network of his previous targets had grown into a documented database. Screenshots, videos, witness statements from dozens of people across 3 cities. She'd found a pattern in his employment history too, a trail of gyms and fitness centers where he'd left under suspicious circumstances. I made a decision that went against every instinct my training had given me. Instead of avoiding confrontation, I would create the conditions for him to destroy himself. We announced a women's self-defense workshop, knowing he wouldn't be able to resist the opportunity to disrupt it. The night of the workshop arrived. I'd stationed Victoria and several others from our network in strategic positions. The coffee shop across the street, the parking garage next door, sitting in cars with clear sightlines to my gym entrance. Everyone had cameras ready, understanding we needed indisputable documentation. He showed up exactly when expected, during the initial gathering time when participants would be most vulnerable. But he'd learned subtlety. Instead of barging in, he entered quietly with 2 new accomplices I didn't recognize, all 3 wearing workout clothes as if they belonged. They spread out, positioning themselves to block exits while maintaining plausible deniability. I continued the workshop introduction, explaining basic awareness concepts while monitoring their movements. The women in attendance, actually martial artists from allied schools who'd volunteered to help, played their roles as nervous beginners perfectly. His confidence grew as he saw what appeared to be easy targets. The disruption started small. One of his friends began doing loud stretches in the corner, grunting excessively. Another started shadowboxing near the entrance, throwing combinations that forced people to dodge. The gym bro himself approached the demonstration area, claiming he wanted to help show realistic attack scenarios. I declined politely, maintaining the instructor persona. He persisted, moving closer, using his size to create pressure. His friends flanked the group, their positioning now obviously coordinated. Several of the students pulled out phones, seemingly nervous but actually capturing every angle. He reached for one of the volunteer victims to demonstrate a grab technique, ignoring my clear instruction to stop. That's when the trap snapped shut. The woman he grabbed was a judo black belt who'd competed nationally. His wrist control attempt turned into an immediate reversal that sent him stumbling backward. His friends rushed forward, but the other beginners responded with trained precision. No one threw strikes or caused injury. Everyone simply used defensive movements to maintain space and control positioning. The entire encounter was being live-streamed to our private network, creating undeniable evidence of coordinated aggression against a women's self-defense class. The gym bro's face went through a series of transformations as he realized the setup. Rage, embarrassment, calculation, and finally desperate aggression. He charged at me directly, no longer caring about subtlety or deniability. I used simple footwork to maintain distance while he chased me around the mat, his friends trying to corner me. Victoria had already called the police from her position, reporting an active disruption at a women's safety workshop. Other network members called from different locations, creating multiple reports that would demand immediate response. The entire chase was being recorded from multiple angles, showing clear aggressor-victim dynamics. When he finally cornered me against the wall, breathing hard and raising his fist, I didn't need to defend myself. The sirens were already audible, growing louder. His friends heard them too, backing toward the exit. But Victoria had thought of that. Network members outside documented their license plates and faces as they fled. The gym bro made his final mistake then, grabbing my shirt and pulling back for a punch just as the first officer entered. No ambiguity, no question of who was the aggressor. The officer's command to stop rang through the gym. He released me immediately, trying to switch back to his innocent act, but the damage was done. The arrest was clean, witnessed by multiple officers and documented by even more cameras. As they led him out, he tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding, that I'd set him up. The officers took statements from everyone present, viewing footage that that clearly showed the progression of events. The students revealed their true credentials only when asked directly, explaining they'd volunteered for a safety demonstration. The next morning, Victoria published everything, not to news outlets or viral platforms, but to a carefully curated network of fitness professionals, gym owners, and martial arts instructors. The documentation package included his entire history of harassment across multiple cities, witness statements from dozens of victims, and the previous night's footage showing clear predatory behavior at a women's safety event. Within days, he was banned from every reputable gym in a 100-mile radius. The budget chain that had hired him conducted their own investigation after receiving our documentation. Former employees came forward with their own stories. His employment ended within a week, this time with no references and a reputation that preceded him everywhere in the fitness industry. My gym recovered. Sarah came back. The students who'd stuck with me through the harassment became my most dedicated practitioners. I'd learned that real strength wasn't about physical dominance. It was about patience, intelligence, and the courage to stand your ground while others exhaust themselves with aggression. The gym bro had taught me that better than any instructor ever could, though I doubt that was his intention. And that's where we'll leave it. Appreciate you sticking around for all my half-baked observations. Everything's more fun with you all here. Catch you on the next adventure, friends. Like the video. It helps more than you think.